Hello, my name is Dr. Matute, University of Arkansas, PTC. This is an overview of blood vessels. This is Human Anatomy and Physiology 2 lab. So we will start very briefly today by let's look at some major anatomical features of blood vessels. Blood vessels, if you look at the structure of a blood vessel, so for example, we could have something like this: 1, 2, 3. So this will be the tunica externa, tunica media, tunica intima, and the lumen or cavity. So anatomically, blood vessels, the walls of the blood vessels, they actually have 3 layers. The outer layer is called the tunica externa, the middle layer tunica media, and the innermost layer tunica intima, and then they end up with the lumen or the blood vessel. Lumen or the blood vessel. So the walls have 3 layers. Now, in addition to these 3 layers, 1, 2, 3, plus the lumen, number 4, if it is a vein, it has an additional anatomical structure. The vein has an additional anatomical structure, and that will be the valve. So the vein will have in addition a valve. Now let's quickly look at some anatomical differences between arteries and veins. Look at some anatomical differences between arteries and veins. So over here we have veins, here we have arteries. Then we can put here features. So what are we looking at? The first thing is the walls. The walls of veins are thinner. The walls of arteries are thicker. Check the diagrams provided. You should be able to see this. The next thing we want to look at, the lumen, the cavity. The lumen, larger, smaller. The presence of the valve. Present, absent. Color, generally bluish and reddish or pinkish. Reddish or pinkish. So this is a good summary of some major differences between arteries and veins. We could also add location. I could just make another one right here. We could add location. Look at location. Veins they are normally superficial, as they are found on the surface, more or less. Deep. The arteries are deep inside. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have about say five differences here, or differences here between arteries and veins. Now, if you go back to the study material that are actually provided, you will see on page number 3, the table on page number 3, you'll find the different types of blood vessels and their functions. In other words, the type of blood that they transport. Then if you go to page number 6, There's a table on page number 6 as well, study material number 2. You'll see the wall layers, the 3 wall layers, and their respective function. Please go ahead and actually study that. Now, while you are studying that, one thing you should note is while generally arteries, they transport oxygen rich blood. So arteries, they transport oxygen rich blood. Veins transport oxygen poor blood. Veins, they transport oxygen poor blood. Exception. Pulmonary vein transports oxygen rich blood, while the pulmonary artery transports oxygen for blood. So one more time, generally arteries, they transport oxygen rich blood, veins, they transport oxygen poor blood. But if we put pulmonary here, we are reversing their function. So a pulmonary vein will transport oxygen rich blood, and a pulmonary artery will transport oxygen poor blood. Every time you see pulmonary, it means these vessels, they take blood to the lungs, or they take blood away from the lungs. All right, let's go ahead and do some hands on now. We'll look at let's look at some major blood vessels here. We have seen this when we did in one of our illustrations when we did the heart itself. But let's look at some of the major blood vessels that are associated with the human heart. The first one we want to look at is this is the aorta. This is the aorta, and then this is the arch here. This is the arch here. Where you have the arch, you have these 3 vessels that originate from the arch and they move superior. These 3 vessels that originate from the arch. The 3 vessels, this one here, the one on the left, is the brachiocephalic trunk. The one in the middle is the common carotid artery, and the one on the right is the subclavian artery. Brachiocephalic trunk, common carotid artery, subclavian arteries. I hope you can see those 3. So we'll consider that from here to here. This is the aorta itself. This is the arch where it curves, and then you have these 3 derivative of vessels that they move superior to the heart. Then here, this will be considered the descending aorta. Descending aorta. So we have 3 major divisions here. Descending aorta. This is the arch right here, and then this is the aorta itself. Then the next vessels that are associated here will be the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. This is the superior vena cava because it is found on top of the heart, superior to the heart. And then this is the inferior vena cava, below the heart. Superior above the heart, inferior below the heart. Then next we have the pulmonaries. The pulmonaries. Now this is the pulmonary trunk or pulmonary arteries. Pulmonary trunk or pulmonary arteries. And over here we have the pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins, pulmonary veins, pulmonary veins, pulmonary trunk or pulmonary arteries. Then on the surface of the heart itself, here we have the cardiac vein. This is the cardiac vein, and then this is the coronary artery. Coronary artery, red, cardiac vein, blue. The next model we'll examine is this one right here. And right here, we'll find the bluish one. This is the inferior vena cava. And then this one over here, this will be the descending aorta. Inferior vena cava, descending aorta. Then this here, this offshoot from the inferior vena cava that branches into the kidney, this is called the renal vein. Renal vein, renal artery. Renal vein, renal artery. Then down here, the descending aorta splits into two, and each of this is the iliac artery. So this is the right iliac artery, this is the left iliac artery. Left iliac vein, right iliac vein. So if I put it behind here, so this is the inferior vena cava. It branches out. It branches out to the left iliac vein and the right iliac vein. Our next model is the lungs. Here, these are the pulmonary veins, pulmonary arteries. Pulmonary veins, pulmonary arteries. Remember, we said that when it comes to the vessels that goes to the lungs, when we put pulmonary in front, it reverses the function. So this is the pulmonary vein, it transports oxygen-rich blood, and then this is the pulmonary artery, it transports oxygen-poor blood. We can see that here in this larger model as well. So this will be the pulmonary vein right here. These are going to be the pulmonary arteries right there. All right, so this one more time. This is the pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery. You come over here, pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery. Remember, once as we put pulmonary, then their roles actually they are reverted. So we put pulmonary vein, transport oxygen-rich blood, and pulmonary artery, transport oxygen-poor blood. Now, let's take our attention above the heart. So this is our aorta here. You see that it comes over here, it branches to the left and branches to the right. When it branches to the right, there is one branch that is going superior, another branch that is going lateral. So this lateral branch here, the lateral branch right here, I hope you can actually see that. The lateral branch right here, don't know how easy that can be seen. The lateral branch here, that's the subclavian artery. Then the superior, the branch that moves superior, this is the carotid artery. So this is the carotid artery, and the one that goes lateral, this is the subclavian artery. We'll have that on both sides. So one more time, this is the carotid artery, and then this is the subclavian. So we have left and right. Subclavian, carotid, subclavian, carotid. Then also here we see that this is the superior vena cava. The superior vena cava also, it divides, it branches into two. One arm actually goes lateral, the other one goes vertical. It goes superior. Now, the lateral branching, this one over here, this is the subclavian vein, and then this is the jugular vein. The same over here. This will be the subclavian vein, and this is the jugular vein. All right, so this we've seen before. Again, like we said, this is the descending aorta and then the inferior vena cava. So you see that the descending aorta, it divides, the descending aorta, it divides into an iliac artery, another iliac artery. So the left iliac artery, it supplies the left lower limbs, and the right iliac artery supplies the right lower limbs. Now, the descending aorta, it also branches out to the renal artery that supplies the kidney. Renal artery supplies the kidney. Now, the inferior vena cava, it also branches out to the iliac vein, left iliac vein, and right iliac vein. Right iliac vein, left iliac vein. Then it also branches out here to the kidney. So this will be the renal vein, another renal vein here as well. To recap, in this brief presentation, we've seen a total of 25 blood vessels. We saw the aorta, the aortic arch. We saw 3 sub blood vessels under the aortic arch, but we can consider that to be one. So we have the aorta, the aortic arch, the descending aorta. Then we had the superior vena cava, inferior vena cava. Then we had the pulmonary vein, pulmonary arteries. Then we had the coronary arteries and cardiac vein. Then we saw in the, we'll move over to the urinary system model. We saw the inferior vena cava again. We saw the descending aorta again. Then we saw the renal artery and renal vein. Then we saw the iliac artery and iliac vein. Then in the lung models, we saw the pulmonary artery and pulmonary vein. Then above the heart, we saw the subclavian artery and carotid artery. We had it both left and right, subclavian arteries and carotid arteries. Then still above the heart, we saw the subclavian vein, the jugular vein, and if we make them left and right, so we have the left subclavian vein and the jugular vein, and then we'll have the right subclavian vein and the right jugular vein. So above the heart, we identified 4 veins: subclavian, left subclavian vein, left jugular vein, right jugular vein, and right subclavian vein. Then also above the heart, for the arteries, we saw 4 also. The subclavian artery, that's the left subclavian artery and the left carotid arteries. Then we had the right carotid arteries and the right subclavian arteries. You need to note this because your assignment is going to be based on this, on all of these vessels that we are able to see in this brief presentation. Again, a total of 25. Thank you.